Mad Max Fury Road is the 2015 George Miller film starring Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron. I think that's how you pronounce it, I'm not too sure. But right here on the back of this, we have a quote from Sean Edwards at Fox TV that says, "The best action movie ever made." And to you, Sean Edwards, I wholeheartedly agree. This movie is absolutely amazing, and I enjoyed every minute. So let's go ahead and jump in with the characters and the story. So we don't really know a whole lot about the backstory of Tom Hardy's character. We know that at some point in time his family was killed, whether it was something that he did that caused that to happen or just something that happened. They are dead, and he gets captured at the beginning by the war boys of the leader of the Citadel, which is the city where the story begins, essentially. And he's not necessarily tortured, but he is marked up and becomes a body bag for one of the drivers of the War Dog Party, which I don't really know the purpose for it, but he is hooked up to the driver through like a chain and a blood pump, and there's just constantly his blood is pumping towards them. Like I said, I don't know the purpose of that. That's just the case. Charlize's character, on the other hand, is taking their oil rig to Gastown, or at least she's supposed to be. She ends up taking a detour and has taken the wives of the leader of the Citadel, which he uses to just try and get a proper son for the heir to his throne. She's taking them to the Green Place, which is in her mind a very fruitful, lively, green place where she was born and stolen from and taken to the Citadel. So she wants a better life for them, wants them to be hopeful, and she's taking them there. And it's Tom Hardy's driver that is in the war party that goes after her. So there's some fighting and stuff, and he ends up on her rig, and now together they're running away from the Citadel's war party. And that's generally the gist of this movie story. The acting in this movie isn't bad by any standard whatsoever, but it's kind of the opposite of how The Shining was, where The Shining didn't really... The aesthetics and such, they played their part, but they weren't as big of a role as the acting was in that movie, whereas in this movie, the acting is good and it has its roles, but it doesn't add as much to the story as the aesthetics do. Well, they add to the story more, but they're not as big as part of a movie as the aesthetics are. That being said, Tom Hardy does a great job. He doesn't really have a whole lot of dialogue, but his actions, the way he moves about his character, the fight scenes and such, he does very good in those. Charlize's character has a very hopeful look to her eyes, and she is determined to get to this place, and she is doing everything in her power to get there. The wives do a fantastic job, and the acting is there, the story is there, the characters are well built, and you see them develop throughout it, and that part is generally very good. Like I've said though, that's not what carries this movie in my own personal opinion. It is great, it is a big part, but the aesthetics are much bigger and much better. If I had to describe this movie in one word, that word would be enormous. This movie is scaled so much bigger than anything I've seen ever, more than likely. They're just in this vast desert that expands as far as the eye can see. Literally, there's one point where they're out on the salt is what they call it, and he says, "We need to turn back because I guarantee even if you drive for 168 days like you say you're going to, it's just going to be more salt." And it really puts that picture in your mind that this is just a desolate wasteland, and that is just one aspect of it. Then we have the vehicles. The main vehicles that the main bad guy rides around in is basically two cars stacked on top of each other with monster truck tires. The tanker they're in is like an 18-wheeler, except probably twice as big, with a cab twice as big, and they're towing a 20,000, 2,000 gallon oil rig on the back. It's ridiculous. And my favorite car, absolutely, is where the guitar player is. They have drums on the back, and then there's a guitar player hanging from just like cords that leave him dangling. There's a car in front that pulls it, and it's just this wall of speakers. That is my favorite car. It makes me laugh every time I see it because it's just so absurdly huge, unnecessarily huge, but it plays its part in the story. You definitely hear that guitar, hear those drums throughout any time those cars are in the scene, and it's just amazing, honestly. Watching the War Party. The War Party is a large amount of cars, and then there's 2 more war parties that join them. It is absolutely fantastic. The aesthetics in this movie are beautiful to go along with the grand scale that everything has. The fight scenes are absolutely amazing. There's one particular fight scene whenever the rig first stops and Tom Hardy is fighting Shailene's character, and they're going at it. They're rolling around, fighting for a gun, beating each other with like a wrench and stuff. It's amazing. The choreography for that is fantastic. If you're watching this and you choreographed Mad Max, beautiful job. Cinematographically, this one does a little, how I talked about in previous ones about the zoom. This movie does the zoom a little bit differently than what I previously talked in one of my other reviews. This one uses the opposite of the zoom, actually, where they have the camera mounted and the war party moves towards you instead of you moving towards the war party. And it really gives you that sense that the war party is constantly gaining on Tom Hardy and Shailene, because that's just what the camera is. It's constantly pulling them towards you and putting them in your face, and it really makes you feel like the chase is on. It does a good job of, like I've said, setting up that grand scale of getting the wasteland in a shot, of getting those massive vehicles in a shot. And the directing is just very fantastic. I really enjoyed that part because it wasn't necessarily unique in a sense, but it definitely did a very good job compared to some of the other movies where it wasn't as necessary. This one just does it better than the other 2 movies that I've reviewed. Not to say those are bad, those reviews have already been done, but this one just did it better. It did a better job of showing the grand scale that this is on, showing the intenseness of the chase, showing the desperation and the hopefulness that Shailene's and the wives have. And then it also does a good job of showing you the fights roll out. The fighting is amazing, whether it's between 2 people that are just going at it or whether it's between 2 vehicles going at it. The action and the fighting is some of the best I've seen ever as well. Compared to the grand scale, the fighting is fantastic, the directing is fantastic. This is an amazing movie. After watching Mad Max, I have to say that this may be my new favorite movie. It is definitely recommended to you as a viewer. Definitely want you to go see this movie. It is absolutely fantastic. Every single part about it. It starts off very action-paced whenever they're first trying to get away from the party, and then there's not a lull, but it slows down, and it still has its bits of action in there that don't make you feel bored. At no point of this did I feel bored. I always felt like something was about to happen, or there was dialogue that was interesting, that furthered the story, and then also just the end. The end is, you really just have to see this movie. Like, as a reviewer, I can't really put into words just how grand this movie really is. The scale is huge. The fighting and the action is magnificent. And until you see it for yourself, like, there's really no other way for you to experience it, because there's no other movie that will match this in my own personal mind. I know there's still some movies that I still need to see that you may think do, but from what I've seen so far in my life, nothing matches this movie at any point in time whenever it comes to the action and the scale. Now, obviously, there are movies with better stories and better acting, but just overall, this is definitely my new favorite movie, I have to say. I moved on from possibly to definitely my new favorite movie, and I'm going to be giving it a 10 out of 10. Greg Miller did fantastic work here. Tom Hardy, Shailene's did amazing jobs. Whoever did the car design, the costume design, the director of photography, it was beautifully magnificent, and would definitely recommend this film to you, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Just as I hope you guys enjoyed this video, I want to thank you guys for liking, watching, commenting. Don't forget to subscribe, and as usual, it's been your Pack of Joker. Y'all have a nice day.